hear about Singapore's ambition to adopt robotics. Talking to us about this is Mr. Oliver Tian, a seasoned speaker at numerous international conferences and a champion of leveraging technologies to augment human capability and potential. He is the honorary advisor to APARA and vice chair to AIRA. He is also the immediate past president to the Singapore Industrial Automation Association. Welcome, Oliver.
Thank you, Elle. Hey, thanks, everyone. Good to see all of you again. It is a pleasure to now get a bit more focus around the national initiatives on robotics. Well, it's good to hear the inputs and the initiatives from Korea down to Thailand and then Malaysia. Let me now quickly run through a discussion on Singapore. And following my discussion, we'll probably get into a little panel discussion, a roundtable, so that we can dive deeper into some of the topics that we're interested to look at. Let me first start off by sharing with you that 3-4 years ago, there was a committee that put together our main strategies for the future economy. We kind of looked into what is expected, and the committee came up with 7 strategies that we need to adopt. Of course, much of this are pre-pandemic. But having said that, we probably need to tweak it but in effect, a lot of the intentions are still realistic and adoptable. So I want to kind of dive into that. We kind of created 23 industry roadmaps. So for the different sectors, right, be it education, be it energy, and chemicals, electronics, security, transportation, and so on and so forth, we actually derive what the roadmaps will look like and how the industries are expected to transform. And in the transformation process, we definitely look at AI and robotics being a very key part in the transformation. Of course, these roadmaps are constantly being updated as we see more technology, as the economic situation changes, we adapt accordingly to fit the needs. Now, AI and robotics is probably one of the key components that is going to help us build the Smart Nation initiative, right? And just before COVID-19 hit us in November 2019, we announced our national AI strategy and how this, in fact, will dovetail our national robotic plan, right? And the intention then was really to ensure that all parties are involved to support this initiative. Now, what I wanted to talk a bit about is really why Singapore needed to go into this direction, right? And saying that robotics is a important Smart Nation initiatives. What can we do, and what is urging us to get into this particular space? There are probably 6 challenges that we are facing today in Singapore, right? First of all, like most of the developed countries, aging population is a key factor, right? The number of elderly that we have above 65 is increasing very much, and we need to ensure that they continue to be part of the economy and be inclusive in the technology transformation. We're also seeing a declining birth rate. We are slowly seeing our population stabilizing, and with the decline in immigration of foreign talents, this is certainly affecting us quite a bit in terms of the talents and the workforce that we have. Of course, aging population comes with longevity, and all this leads us to, number 1, labor shortages, number 2, labor gaps that we have. And foreign labor continues to be a challenge for us. Bringing foreign talents into our country to support the different productivity movements becomes a continuing challenge that we have to face. Hence, robotics becomes a very important component of how we can drive productivity. Now, how is Singapore supporting the robotic initiative? We believe we can play a key role at the world stage, if not at the regional stage, to support ourselves as well as our neighbors in how we look at robotics. More importantly, we are deeply committed to building a reputation as an innovator in robotics and intelligent machines. Now, this is the direction we want to go into. As a result of that, we have developed a number of initiatives. First of all, of course, is to build a proper ecosystem that brings parties together that can co-work in research and in developing robotic solutions. Now, research is, of course, a very important part of the whole robotic initiative. The number of universities that we have are deeply engaged into research. And you may have heard of our flagship product called LionBot, who have created a line of robots that is able to provide the service in the industry today. In fact, LionBot has moved very far ahead in their progress. Recently, they were reviewed by the Asian Robotics Review, and they shared quite a bit of activities. One very interesting innovation that LionBot created was around how cleaning robot can work in a team, right, together cleaning the office space. So very interesting idea there. Talent scouting, networking, and partnership are another component program that we have built on an ongoing basis to ensure that we are able to dovetail international talents with our local talents. More importantly, finding the different methods and ways of partnership to enable that to happen. Funding and support, absolutely. We are definitely in a move to ensure that we engage and encourage our enterprises to play a part, and we also engage and encourage foreign companies to come to Singapore and build robotic initiatives here. Training and education, of course, are two big initiatives, and in the current pandemic times, these are two major programs that we have rolled out for the workforce in Singapore. Perhaps it's also important for us to understand, right, some of the issues that we want to drive at, right? So I've divided this slide into two parts, right? One is the expected outcome. With robotics, what do we expect to see happen? And secondly, is the issue that we need to manage with the discussion around automation, robotics, and potentially the displacement of the workforce, right? So let's deal with the expected outcome as a first goal. So there are five main expected outcome that we're looking for in our roadmap. First of all, increasing productivity that can contribute eventually to the economy. Secondly, is to enhance efficiency, to make sure that each step that we do, that we perform in the workflow are efficient and there's no slack in the process. Human safety is also on top of the list, right? When we talk about humans coming together to interact and co-work with machines, this is of utmost importance. We saw the first presentation by Cobosis, which talks about robots that are now cobots that work together, right, with the human. It is very important not to assume that safety is taken for granted, and it is important we ensure, right, there are sufficient guidelines to enable, right, the deployment of robotic machines in the workplace. Higher quality of life. With machines, we do expect that we can leave the human to a more higher value add service level, and allow the machine to do the more repetitive, boring, and dull jobs. And in that way, a more cohesive and more powerful society as we move forward. Finally, job creation, right? We believe we can create jobs. We will upskill, we will cross-train, we will reskill our workforce in order to create, for them to be ready for the new jobs that's created. And as a whole, we move forward as an advance as a society. So these five expected outcomes are key to our deployment of robotic technology. Now, having said all this, we also know that there are issues that we need to manage, right? We need to manage certain issues. Firstly, is the fear of losing jobs. Well, especially when we look at the transient workers who are at the verge of looking towards their retirement, their fear of being displaced, the uncertainty around retraining and pick up new skills at a mature age. How can we ensure that this happens, right? Secondly, another issue to manage is inequality, not just skill inequality, but intergenerational gap. as an important part of our discussion. Clearly, with technology, we are seeing that the grandparents and the grandchildren are beginning to distance away because of technology. The exposure of the elderly on technology could be limited compared to what the young ones are going through today. So bridging the gap is probably going to be important. That's one aspect of inequality. But of course, inequality in terms of income, in terms of technology awareness, are also other areas that we need to manage. Localization, right? Every country is going to have their very different local practices and expectations. Hence, it is very important to ensure that we are able to allow, right, good technology that we import from overseas and find ways to localize it to fit the requirements and needs of the local community. Hence, we do invest quite a lot in looking at how technology can be localized, customized to fit the local need. And finally, managing the cost. Right, managing the cost is a very important component, especially in our current pandemic situation. This is because that while we are trying to look at survival, putting money into investing for the longer term returns is going to be a big decision that we need to think about. Hence, it's important to see what are better ways to have a reduced investment cost and a shortened time to develop. So that definitely doesn't work out for most technologies. It's an issue that we need to manage. It's a challenge that we need to deal with. But we're confident that if we can look at it from a broader scale, where we drive solution more at the industry level rather than a specific needs basis, we would be able, right, to address these issues. So, how do we prepare our folks, our local people, for the future with robots? So, there are a number of programs that we have put in place, right? First of all, helping human workers to understand and eventually feel comfortable co-working, coexisting with robots, right? So, this is a very important piece, right? In the past, we have got robots in the factory. We put a yellow box around it and say, do not go beyond the line, right? But with today's robot, such as those that are in the cleaning environment, in the F&B space, and in the retail space, you get close to the robot, you touch the robot, you interact with the robot. Hence, learning how to work with the robots is such an important piece. Allaying fear. There are many programs that we've put together in place to allay fears around robots replacing the human workforce. Well, robots could probably perform a task, but they will never be able to perform a role. And our view is that we believe automation and robotics will be able to augment a human capability in performing the role, right? So never try to compete with the robot and the machine or the AI around computational needs, but we could look at the machines producing good recommendations and insights that humans can make judgment on. Reskilling, massive efforts. Our Skills Future program looks into how we can transfer, cross-pollinate the skills of our workers into jobs that will require new skills. Future proofing. We do a lot of test bedding. We have sandboxes here and there to support any initiative that wants to look at how where robot can play a part, right? To prove the value add that is contributing to the part to play. And finally, the government has several funding schemes to support companies to adopt technology. I guess Singapore is probably one of the few countries that spend quite a bit of support for our small and medium enterprises, not to say the large ones, but the small and medium enterprises where we bring them towards a awareness level to properly educating them to understand the technology and helping them to do the initial adoption of technology, right? So that's a very important piece that we look at as well. So to sum everything up, right, we bring 4 groups of people together in a very powerful ecosystem, right? First of all, it's important for us to know and help the end users understand what is available and some of the proven offerings that can transform the way they operate, right? If there's a gap, then we turn to our research institutes or our institutes of higher learning to try to innovate and ensure that we can conduct sufficient research and development work to fill in the gap. Then we look to the technology providers, right, of all nature, technology providers that is able to support and help deploy some of the solutions. At the same time, we are also looking at enablers that can come into the picture to assist in the whole transformation process. I want to talk about one last piece before I end my presentation, and this is around the Singapore Smart Industry Readiness Index. In the earlier discussion by my Thai colleague, which talk about Industry 4.0, and perhaps they are at level Industry 2.0 to 2.5. Well, what is really Industry 4.0? In this regard itself, the Singapore government has created SIRI, the Singapore Smart Industry Readiness Index SIRI, to help companies understand, right, the different perspective and where do this fit into the whole paradigm. So this is a very complex 3-layer, 3 building block, 8 pillar, 16 dimension matrix that we survey the company to understand their process, the technology, and how the organization is set up, and diving deep into each of the component to indicate the maturity of the different aspects, and from there sum up into a index which can then reflect probably, right, the on the scale of 1 to 4, where exactly are the companies in this index, and hence develop the right technology, provide the right training, and provide the right program to help them move forward in the whole automation process, right? So I'm not going to dive a lot deeper into SIRI, but it is a program that has helped more than 100 SMEs today in Singapore to achieve this. So I just want to end off with that presentation. What I certainly believe in is the humans and machines can collaborate together, and we can be smarter together if we find the right combination for us to collaborate. And I guess we can work regionally, we can work within Asia Pacific region, and more importantly, if we network out into the European community and the Americas, our world can be a lot smarter together, right? So thank you very much, everyone, and I look forward to talking to you again. Over to you, Elle.
Thank you, Oliver, and I'll see you at the